Evening.
Morning. What is time? Time is it's just a concept for humans. How are you today?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good.
It's cold and rainy here, so I don't normally drink tea, but felt suitable for today.
Cold and rainy here too.
Yeah.
Probably not as cold though.
Yeah. Well, we apologize to everybody out there. We are a few days late, at least a few days late, maybe a week late by the time this publishes. We've just had some stuff going on, and we haven't been able to get an episode out as quickly as we would have liked. But we have another interesting conversation topic today. One of them from direct feedback from a listener. So thank you for those that are listening and sending in comments, emails, feedback, however you want to send that over to Will or I, or to the charging curve at gmail.com. We'd love to hear what you have to say and can use some of your questions or thoughts as a jumping off point for some of our discussions.
Yeah, and while you're thinking about stuff to send us or you'd like to hear us talk about, or you're watching this, please like, subscribe, share the link with your friends.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of ways that you guys can engage and do that sort of thing, and it really helps us out. So,
Or even share it with people who aren't your friends. That's fine too.
yeah, you might make a new friend
Yeah.
or
Perfect.
perhaps an enemy.
Yes. So we've got a couple things that revolve around pricing a little bit today, in a couple different ways. So I think this will be fun. I'll share my screen here. Um, so the first one is a an article that was posted in or that was in the Washington Post a while back. I think you saw this, Will, and we both took a look at it. So it was about electricity pricing and who's to blame. So electricity prices are going up, and as usual, people want to blame somebody. So who do we blame? And for a while, when EVs were getting a lot of attention, I don't know if you felt any of this, Will, but I got some of that in my old utility days, where aren't EVs going to be causing problems and making the grid more expensive, and electricity is going to go up? Um, and the latest thing to blame is data centers and AI. So that's what this article is about.
Yep, that was a lot of conversation for a long time in the industry. Especially I can only imagine at the utility level how much you might hear from customers, especially as utilities are advertising, engaging in programs around transportation electrification, and there might be a rate case in front of the utility commission and stuff like that. And utilities have a lot of customers in the areas that they service, like all of them. So,
That is
like
kind of how it works.
everyone,
Yep. That would be if everybody could choose from 16 different interstate highway service providers. You can imagine what real estate and cement and expenses for tolls would look like, right? Um, it would be wild. Same kind of concept for utilities, and we can talk about that I think in a little bit. But what jumped out to you in this article, Will?
so one of the things that I remember in here is, and I thought that they did, I thought that they did a pretty decent job kind of highlighting, and it's right in the title, right? It's not data centers.
Yeah.
They contribute. It's a new load. So there's certain expenses associated with it, but I thought that it did a nice job of kind of highlighting the fact that it's no one thing, and it can be very different regionally, depending on the existing infrastructure that utility has in place, the investments that they've made over time. So I thought it did a nice job, kind of at a super high level. Again, based on my understanding of how utilities work, kind of laying that out.
Yep.
A whole bunch of factors, and If somebody says it's any one thing, they're probably not looking at it close enough.
That's probably true. Yeah, that's a fair point. In most things, right? Um,
Yeah, that's
this was so I'll temper a little bit what you said. Basically, the article is saying it's not data centers, it's not AI, and that's the too short answer. It might not be data centers or AI, but I, utilities don't know enough. We don't know enough about how those actually operate yet to really understand what their load shape and load factor are. So we can talk a little bit more about load shape and load factor when we talk about like a pricing model for a utility. But like so scrolling through this, it's basically the the concept that I kind of laid out. Like electricity prices are going up. Can we blame AI? Can we please just blame AI and make our lives easy? Maybe it's not that easy, right? And the case that they're making here is actually data centers can be very good users of electricity on the grid. Yes, they use a lot of electricity, but if they're using a lot of electricity all the time, that can actually stabilize or bring rates down theoretically. And we'll look at a couple slides that kind of illustrates how that could work. Um, so that's kind of what they're talking through. I wanted to call out a couple things. So this is my these are my red marks on this article, but there's a call out to Econ 101 in this article about teaching students that if demand rises, prices tend to go up, but electricity isn't like any other economic market. And then they just leave it there. They don't actually describe why. So, Will, I'll tee that up for you.
Okay, yeah. Utilities are well, here in the U.S. they're a regulated monopoly. So that's one big difference.
And go.
Um, so to Jeff's, kind of earlier comment where you don't go and see 16 different interstate highways from different providers with different pricing structures on that road that you're going to use, that infrastructure that you're going to use. It's the same thing with utilities, right?
Yeah.
There's one utility usually. It serves a very specific region. There's some differences in different states where they might have preferred power providers and things like that, where you do actually have a few options. But my understanding with those is that they're sharing the same infrastructure, essentially. At least that's how I think it works. I don't really know. But you have this entity that's specifically the one that's going to provide this service to a geographic region. They invest a whole bunch of money in being able to distribute energy into the homes and businesses. And as a result, they, get to set the price, but it's through regulation. So it's, hopefully fair.
Yeah, so that is exactly what you said is the key difference. It warranted a mention in this article. Like, they're not like other markets. Why are they not like other? Because they're regulated monopolies. If electricity wasn't regulated, can you imagine how much you would be willing to pay? Because that's what Econ 101 will do. What is the demand for electricity, and how much are people willing to pay? And that essentially is where that is going to go. Um, it's if that were the case, you and I would both be paying significantly higher electricity bills. But it is regulated monopoly, so exactly like you said, only one provider almost everywhere. There are some overlaps, so where you might have, some people that add customers along edges, where things get maybe a little messy, but for the most part, it is for that reason. It doesn't make sense to have 16 different versions of an electric grid because it's very expensive and time consuming to put up and maintain. So it just wouldn't make any economic sense. And we would all be bearing the brunt of that extra cost. So that was one that I'm reading through this article. I'm like, oh, you got to be kidding me! You just left it there. Um, Another one was this next statement that took. So they have very good feedback from Ryan Hleddick in this article, But this statement is far too simple. So yeah, you just have more customers, therefore things get cheaper. You have more ways to divvy up those fixed costs. That's not It's not because you have more customers, and we'll see that in my very elaborate and time-consuming fraction diagram that I've created for us today. But yeah, it's not about number of customers. It's about costs to build and maintain the system and how much utilization is happening from and within the system.
Yeah, all those costs to actually get the infrastructure in the ground, keep it working. They're represented as part of your rate, right? I mean, so if I'm paying 15 cents a kilowatt hour on an average, right? Um, that that 15 cents, some of that money is actually going towards that infrastructure. Um,
Exactly right. Most of that 15 cents is going towards infrastructure. So that's what's interesting about utilities is they're almost entirely, not almost entirely, predominantly, vastly predominantly a fixed cost market. All of the poles, wires, staff, operations and maintenance, all of that stuff. That is a very big number, and that has to happen regardless of how much electricity you and I use. You have to have those people to build, operate, and maintain to keep everything running.
it reminds me of a couple of conversations ago you had that diagram of a freeway
Yeah,
that was full of vehicles, and the utility grid is similar to that. It's built for that capacity that it needs part of the time.
it's almost like you and I are on the same wavelength here. Well, so yeah, that's exactly it. So it's not about so you build that highway, and if you think about it in terms of cost per vehicle of that highway. So you build the highway, building it has a cost, right? And then it's all right, how long is that highway going to last? And how many people are going to use it? If you're going to truly divide the cost of that thing up per user in the actual equitable way over the life expectancy of that interstate, right? Then you have it's just a math equation. So the more people that are using that, the less it is per person, right? It's very similar with utilities. So with a data center, if they are getting a very large connection to the grid, say it's a 3 or 4 megawatt connection from the grid, a lot of power. You or I have a, a 10 or 20 kilowatt connection to the grid, basically. So orders of magnitude larger. Um, if they basically the utilities build you that huge pipe and you never use it, it's the same as it's a bridge to nowhere, right? It's building a huge piece of road infrastructure that nobody ever uses. So it's just a huge waste of money. But utilities are regulated monopolies. They will recover the cost of building, operating, maintaining their system. The more kilowatt hours, so kilowatt hours are cars in this analogy, the more kilowatt hours there are, um, the less cost it is per kilowatt hour on the system, all things being equal. So
So,
this, assuming these cars are moving at the same speed in both of these images, this is much less expensive per car than this. That's the visual analogy.
yeah, so more power being utilized means it actually costs less.
Right. So
So if
basically, if you
if
take,
if that freeway's full all the time consistently, it's should be cheaper.
yes, in our analogy, you would have to pretend that the cars having more cars on the road has very little, if any, extra damage and doesn't wear out the road any faster. Which, in the case of light duty vehicles, like this image basically shows, that is basically the case. Um, so yeah, piece of cake, right?
So EVs, since they use power and data centers, are actually good for your bill,
They are,
or they
and
can be.
all right, they can be, depending on how they're used. Exactly right. So if you go, so like just to keep it as like a very small purview in an analogy, if you go home, your home has a certain amount of power that you use, right? It's basically all of your electrical assets are sized according to that, more or less. Um, and you are using electricity when you're at home, right? So let's say you go to an office to work, you come back home, and the air conditioning turns on, and I wish we had that problem today. I'm cold. The air conditioning turns on, you turn the lights on, you're getting dinner ready, you turn the oven on. There's a lot of stuff that's happening because you're home, so you're using a lot of your appliances. And at that same exact time, when you've got all of your other stuff going on, you kick on a DC fast charger on top of everything else for your car at home. That's the worst case scenario. You want to, if you can find a way to spread that energy out rather than stack it, that will lower bills. So that's the opportunity that we have, regardless of whether it's data centers or EVs. The
Yeah, if
reason,
there was a consistent amount of power being used on the grid at all times,
yep,
that's the dream. That's like the dream scenario for a utility,
absolutely,
and
yep,
for consumers
yeah,
from a cost standpoint.
yep, be less expensive per kilowatt hour. Absolutely right. Yep. Um, so yeah, this is a super. Um, I spent a lot of time working on this slide, Will. So I hope you appreciate it.
Yeah,
It
if you're just listening, you're missing out. High
you
quality graphic work here. Also, it's a visual representation of math. So that's exciting.
we are doing math today. Everybody, buckle up. So yeah, this is basically the visual equivalent of what we already talked about. So you take whatever the utility system costs, so that's building it, operating it, maintaining it, so that includes staff. You have to pay people to maintain it, to build it, to all of that takes people, human resources, and infrastructure resources. Um, and so that's on the top. We're trying to do this in a way that audio only folks can appreciate as well. So that cost is on the top. That's the top of a fraction. It's your numerator. Also in the numerator is regulated equity. So I mentioned that we mentioned that utilities are regulated monopolies. If, for the sake of our audience, they're regulated monopolies. Um, so what that means is utilities, as a regulated monopoly, get to serve, and they're the only ones that get to serve that area that we talked about, right? So for you, who's your utility, Will?
Roseville Electric.
Roseville Electric. Shout out,
It's a
Roseville
yep.
Electric. If you would like to sponsor this podcast, we can welcome
Awesome
you right
municipal utility.
there. Absolutely. So that's funny. My utility in the U.S. was also a municipal utility. So that's not terrible. Yeah, interesting that we both were on munis. Um, but for the investor-owned utilities, so not a muni, or three types. I didn't intend to get into this level of detail, but for municipal utilities or for cooperative utilities, this other piece of the numerator fraction that we're talking about today does not apply because there's no earnings component in terms of the cost of their system. But for investor-owned utilities, so for example, American Electric Power, where I used to work, is an investor-owned utility. They are, shout out AEP, let's get you on board, crank up the sponsorships. Um, they they are they get the privilege of being able to serve all of the customers in their area. They have the burden of being regulated by, in AEP's case, it's the Public Utilities Commission of Ohio. Um, and so that means the PUCO gets to determine what are and what are not costs that are allowed to be put into that numerator of the system. So building, operating, maintaining the system in that example. And then there's also a defined and allowed by the regulator amount of equity. So basically, I'm an investor-owned utility. I made $100 of profit last year. I'm going to take that profit and I'm going to build more to my system to serve more customers or to serve customers better or address issues like I want to put in a battery storage location on the grid to help even things out and provide better power quality. Investments like that in the system, I'm allowed to earn a very small amount of return on. So it's generally in the 4 to 6% range. I don't know. I haven't looked at those in a long time, so don't quote me on that. But it's small because they are a regulated monopoly. So there's those the yin the yin and yang of all of that comes out, right? You have all of these customers that you're granted, but you have a regulator who gets to decide what your recoverable costs are and what your rate of earnings is allowed to be. Um, uh, so yeah, it's an interesting situation. So that's all
And
the
they're
new.
and they're they're owned by investors, so they need to make money
Yeah.
versus
Um,
versus your the, the intention is to have profits at the end of the year.
Yeah, if they're operating at a deficit, they're not going to be around for very long, and somebody will have to buy them at a fire sale price, and they'll have to figure something out. But yes, there's a lot of there's intricacies in that relationship, right? As an investor-owned utility, they essentially need a good faith partnership with their regulator. The regulator maintains equity on behalf of the customers, but the regulator also needs to allow appropriate things because otherwise it actually it doesn't help the customers. It will erode things in a way that eventually will cause either service problems or who knows, drastic increases in prices at some point because somebody has to effectively rebuild the system. Those are, drastic
And
examples, but
the other two types of utilities that we were talking about, the municipal and the cooperatives, are not for-profit entities
correct.
generally.
But they are still regulated.
Yep.
They just have different uh, regulatory partners or overseers, if you will. So for a municipal utility, so like for you, it's I'm guessing, City Council of Roseville.
I would assume.
For me, it was City Council of Westerville in Ohio. Um, or for like a cooperative is essentially owned by all of its members. So all of its members are able to like vote on what they all do. So they're essentially kind of their own regulators, and that's a whole other interesting world. So yeah, so the actual cost of the system. So back to the fraction, right? The actual cost of the system and any earnings that are allowed, if any, are in the numerator of this fraction. The denominator is the amount of energy, the number of kilowatt hours that are consumed by everybody. So we're simplifying this a little bit just to be one fraction. So you take all of that. It's exactly the what we've been talking about before. You have to build, operate, maintain the system, and then you take whatever that is, divide it by the number of kilowatt hours used on the system, and what you get out is a cost per kilowatt hour. So that's what you'll ultimately see on your bill. You run your LED TV at home for a few hours, and it's going to cost you, I don't know, $1. Depends on the specifics of your TV and how much energy it uses per hour. So yeah, that's how we get there. Um, this setup with the fraction. One other thing I wanted to come back to, Will, as a so I mentioned like 4 to 6% is sort of an earnings number. I don't know if you're, I'm sure you do, with some of the companies that you've worked at, but the actual hurdle that privately owned, non-regulated companies look at to receive, like their hurdle rate essentially, we must make this investment that we're about to make must make us at least X percent in terms of earnings, or we're not going to do it. Do you have any examples of what that hurdle rate is for other private non-regulated entities?
It's a lot more than 2 to 3%.
Sure is. Yes.
I could say that.
Yeah.
Y and like it's a lot more than 2 to 3% net. That's after everything, right?
Yeah.
So it's as a markup percentage, it's very low.
The reason that that utilities, investor-owned utilities, are willing to accept that lower rate of earnings is that they are a regulated monopoly. So it's all of those trade-offs are part of the relationship and the things that happen with utilities. Fun world. So I got a little spicy with my fraction and my diagram here. So now it's not just a very, very slick math equation with a numerator, denominator, and net cost per kilowatt hours. But if we look at these different components, so we talked a lot about regulated equity. We can just put that aside for now. Um, Essentially, if the cost of your system goes up a good bit more than the amount of energy that is consumed, what happens?
To go,
Your
your cost goes up.
Right. So what you're paying instead of 10 cents per kilowatt hour might be 15 cents per kilowatt hour. That'll go up over time. So an example of something that this could be the classic example for utilities is like a trash compactor. So it operates infrequently, and when it does operate, actually a DC fast charger is kind of similar. It's a similar analogy. When you're talking about one vehicle, like if you're only ever looking at that DCFC for one vehicle a month, it would be the same analogy. But a trash compactor uses a ton of power for a very short period of time, right? And then it'll sit idle for a long time, and then it'll use a bunch more power for a very short period of time, and then sit idle. So it's that kind of load or customer that would give you this result. So here's another one. So the cost of your utility system is going up, and your actual amount of energy is going down. Can you think of anything that would cause this?
I don't know. I guess like businesses or large businesses or a bunch of people leaving a given utility service territory.
Could be if you have, yeah, customers leaving, so you're losing load, but then maybe you just happen to be at the end of your life expectancy and you have to build a lot into the system. So you've deferred maintenance for a long period of time, and then suddenly a lot of those things are starting to fail and you have to replace or build new parts of your system. Yeah, that could be it.
People using less energy because they're solar storage, so microgrids, non-utility, sort of like microgrids coming online at a high
Yep.
rate in an area.
Yeah, it could be, depending on how that microgrid is actually integrated into the utility. Could be. The one, the example that I love to hate on is energy efficiency, actually. And being more energy efficient is absolutely the right thing to do. Big picture, it is the right thing to do. And I'm an engineer, so you know how I would am with with trying to use less, be more efficient in everything that I do, not just not just electrical energy, but just in my life. I'm always looking for ways to be more efficient, and you're probably similar. Um, it's kind of like seems like an affliction sometimes. But that's so you have a program. So utilities have they got energy efficiency programs. Uh, they were approved by regulators. So you're Roseville, and this isn't just caveat. This is not any real information or numbers. We'll just talk in fun numbers. So Roseville got a program approved where they would like to help their customers switch from um, let's use lighting, that's the easiest one. Incandescent bulbs, so we have to step back in history. Incandescent bulbs over to LEDs. So you're what they were doing is taking money. The utility was putting money on the table to help customers pay less for LEDs to incentivize them. So that those are costs. Those are recoverable costs. So in that little tiny myopic view, the prices were going up of the utility system. And you take that incandescent bulb out and you put the LED bulb in, which is the right thing to do, just again to underscore that. But your energy went down by like a factor of 10. So um, that's this is another example of this situation. So you have costs going up, energy going down. Your net cost per kilowatt hour will eventually go way up. And again, we were only looking at one tiny little part of the overall utility picture in that case, but it's one of the examples.
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting thing when you do look at utilities, and it makes a lot of sense given, that sort of relationship. A lot of times when you see an energy efficiency program going on, they likely also have some other electrification program that's being run, either ahead of it or in parallel, or right behind it. So like transportation electrification is a big investment because that's more utilization.
Yep.
Efficiency is less, but then they have another program to, help people get electric stoves, or water heaters,
Yep.
or and make up the difference and then some.
Yep. Yeah, the smart utilities will do that, and that's usually there are big decarbonization opportunities related to that. So you can imagine like a big um, some kind of factory where they retrofit all of their lighting, so their actual electrical energy consumption from their lighting goes way down, which is good. But they've got, I don't know, an old gas-fired boiler or process heater or something that would be a lot more efficient if they changed over to an electric technology. I don't have a good example off the top of my head, but um, or we just go back to EVs. I don't know. Maybe that would be a good topic for us on this podcast.
They
We
they are quite efficient.
Yeah, so that's exactly an example, right? That's
Yeah.
with an EV, you are you are using electricity for your transportation. So you're using way more electricity for transportation than you used to because it used to be gasoline, but you're not using any gasoline, and the actual energy content of the gasoline that you use for transportation was way, way, way higher. So that's big picture energy, not just reducing electricity consumption, but big picture energy efficiency. There are lots and lots and lots of cases, EVs being a prime example, where um, that EVs are big picture energy efficiency. You're using less energy for transport because you stopped using gas and you started using electricity. They are just more efficient, period.
Yeah, it's something like EVs is something like 85% of the energy translates into moving the vehicle and then with gas, it's something like, I want to say it's 17 or 18%, but I might not have that number right.
All right, so that was the end of my super slick slides. Second, is that a new segment name? Super slick slides.
Ooh, if that sounds like an exciting segment to you, like, subscribe, or shoot us a note at TheChargingCurve@gmail.com.
Well done. Yeah, you can tell me how stupid that alliteration was, and I probably won't apologize to you, but apologies up front. All right, so that's it for the multimedia portion today. Anything else you want to circle back on? I talked way too much, Will. I'm sorry.
No, I think it was, said it's an interesting article, and it's kind of fun to look at a super high level what goes into the fact that when you flick a switch, the room brightens up or cools down or heats up. It's something that is super common, super reliable, dependable, but actually very, very complex
Yeah,
for something that costs so little, really.
yeah, yeah,
Nobody likes bills to go up. I'm, not saying that when rates go up, it's a good thing, but also like, man, you sure do get a lot for a few pennies per kilowatt hour.
yep, absolutely. Yeah, it's easy to take it for granted, but as we one of the, I don't know if it's the last episode or not. My brain's mush today. We mentioned battery backup using EVs as a great opportunity to leverage that battery on wheels for a really valuable purpose for the people that own the car. And that's essentially like you put yourself in that situation. Like pretty much everybody has lived through a power outage. Usually doesn't happen very often. And then when it does happen, what would you pay to, if somebody showed up and said, "Oh, I'll get you right back up and running, connect you over to this magical technology that I have out here in my truck, but you're going to pay me, I don't know, $1 per kilowatt hour." I
Yeah,
mean,
people go out and buy generators for hundreds of dollars.
oh yeah,
Just if power is going to be out for more than a couple hours or something. Uh, our air conditioner broke earlier this year on holiday weekend, and it was 100 all weekend long.
oh
And we went and bought a little, $250 to keep one room in the house cool
yeah,
ish.
at least not
And
sweltering
so
hot.
yeah, so the value of like something like that, it increases exponentially when it's taken away.
Oh,
Electricity, same
absolutely.
thing.
Yep. Yep. Well, I think we can go to something even cooler, which is a listener question or listener feedback. You want to tee that one up for us?
Oh yeah, let's see if I've actually have the question. Did we okay. Uh and this is straight from a listener.
And you
Um
too can send us questions, comments, feedback at TheChargingCurve@gmail.com.
so and I'm going to read this here. Can you do a discussion on the impact of moving from a petrol market offering competition amongst fuel suppliers uh, to a reliance on utility companies as a sole source fuel supplier, and how that may impact prices, considering the increase in electricity prices recently?
Um, we've kind of talked around this a bit, but with prices and utilities as a regulated entity, right? Um, so you have gasoline. I mean, one of the cool things about gasoline is you can see prices usually on gigantic billboards with bright lights, um, and then you can look at something like Gas Buddy. Gas Buddy, I don't think this is a good fit, but if you want to sponsor our show, you just let us know. You could look at an app like, or whatever resource like Gas Buddy and see like, oh, I can pay 3 cents less per gallon if I drive across town or something, right? Um, And that's just the nature of the gasoline market. All of these folks are competing against each other, kind of. It depends on, the Shell here versus the Shell across town, or who their wholesaler is, where they're actually getting their gasoline. But it is, you have people generally setting their prices independently. So you as a consumer can choose to get it cheaper somewhere else if you have enough time and you have enough information. So the downside or the difference there for utilities, you you don't for like at home, or at work or something, you you don't have a say in who you're going to get that electricity from. As we mentioned, it's largely a regulated monopoly. You will be served by who you're going to be served by. In some markets, there's like retail choice, that's a whole nother can of worms we don't have time for today, but it's the same thing. Even if you have retail choice, everything behind that fancy looking logo on your bill, there's only one system, and the retail provider is just the face of your billing and some of your potentially generation mix. But yeah, you don't have the same kind of visibility with your EV generally. Utilities are setting the prices. Um, so you're going to get what you get, and you have to be comfortable knowing that there's a regulator on the other side of the table from the utility that is going to make sure that if prices are going up, which they have been recently, as this listener mentioned, that they're going up for actual reasons. There's not somebody inflating a budget or ripping people off. It's because there were real costs to the system for whatever reason that had to be incurred, and it was a prudent use of dollars and the right thing for that utility to do, and that's why it went up. Uh, but as we said, great thing about EVs and potentially data centers and potentially AI, depending on how they're operated, if you can if you can drastically increase the amount of kilowatt hours that are coming out of that utility system without causing any additional costs, you can help reduce rates in your little part by driving an EV and charging in a way that doesn't hurt the utility. You can help.
And some people, through the utility, they even incentivize people to use power at certain times, as an
Yep.
example. So
Yep.
some utilities have time of use rates where if you do have like an electric vehicle, you may actually be able to charge it for a lower price point per kilowatt hour than you pay at other times if you charge it during certain times of the day.
Yep.
Some utilities have that, not all. But so it's you don't have the same sort of necessarily choice to go to one gas station to another that might be 2 or 3 cents less per gallon. You don't have that perceived sort of free market driven pricing that we have at for gas stations. But you do have a lot of opportunities depending on the utility that you have, potentially to lower the cost to fuel that vehicle through charging during off peak times, or on during a utility rate window. You also have the ability, in some cases, people may have the ability to generate some of their own power through solar panels, on their home, on their property, to reduce the cost of fueling that vehicle, and actually take some. You actually you have the ability to take a lot of control because it's an electric vehicle. If you have the ability to install solar where you live, you could, in theory, fuel the vehicle for free, or dramatically reduced cost,
Yep.
which you can't really refine gas in your home.
Yeah.
So that's a real opportunity that comes with electrification that just doesn't exist on the other side. And I think the other thing I think about there too is, if you look at public charging, and we talked about this a couple weeks ago, we've got a long way to go in public charging to really make the experience easier for people and potentially more enjoyable. And I think it's the providers that do that. They're dealing with fixed costs in a given under a given utility, and they in theory all have the same fixed costs. So you've got different providers that offer public charging. We've got, Electrify America, EVgo, Tesla, and let's just say they're all in the same town. They're all in the same utility.
Yep.
They kind of have the same set of fixed costs, electricity being one of them, because they're all going to be paying the same rate for that electricity. That
Yep.
doesn't mean that their service is all priced the same. So it is, when you talk about public charging, actually very similar to gasoline. I don't think the industry does as good of a job, having a big sign that says how much it costs that you can just see on every corner, right? Because it's usually you have to go into apps and things like that to understand what it might cost at the chargers at the Costco versus the ones at the Target, run by two different networks.
Yep.
But they have the same fixed cost. Their price is not going to be the same. There is a level of free market competition that takes place there. And then I think also providers over time have the opportunity to, create better experiences, put a canopy over it, add amenities to the sites to really differentiate themselves and establish pricing that is maybe more similar to what you see at gas stations, because that's the public charging is the analogy where, or it's more similar to gasoline, in that experience, because fixed costs are going to be similar, and that's the case with gasoline too. Like, there's a lot of things that happen before you see the price of gas at the gas station that really control what those costs are. It's it's only the very last step of it is like really market competition. Uh, Everything leading up to that is kind of controlled by a couple of players, and they work really hard to kind of control what the cost of that fuel is,
Yep.
and keep it in a certain regions or certain range. So public charging, I think it may seem, I think it's really similar. Like, everyone's kind of dealing with very similar fixed costs, and they have to compete just like anyone else to get people to their site. Same as gas stations do. And
Yeah.
then when you talk about at home, you could have the opportunity to really benefit from leveraging the system, lower rates during certain times of the day, generating your own power and stuff that you just can't do with gas. So
Yep. Yeah, that's exactly where I was going to go. When you start thinking about public charging, that's where it gets different because the face and the person, like, there are, I don't think there are any jurisdictions that I'm aware of where a regulator, a utility regulator, has said that EV charging is a regulated activity. And because they haven't done that, the Tesla can set its own price. Circle K can set its own price. Piggly Wiggly could set its own price. I don't know. That's a down south chain, I think. What's your local supermarket there, Will? Your favorite
where
one?
they actually have chargers, I'd
No,
like
no,
say
they don't have quick
Safeway.
chargers. It's your favorite
Oh,
supermarket.
I like Safeway or
Safe,
Vaughn's.
Safeway. So Safeway or Vaughn's. I mean, we've just given you a nice little mention here on the show. You might want to send us a note at TheChargingCurve@gmail.com and see if you might want to advertise or sponsor us. We'll think about it. But so you've got in that case, and public charging is very different from just like home or at your workplace, where there is a price and you take the price from the utility. In those public charging circumstances, you have an entity that is the charging organization in some way, and they will set their price. But in the case, let's say you get a main thoroughfare, and at that intersection, three of the four corners are one's a Tesla location, another one is oh boy, let's call it Electrify America since we talked about them before, and the other corner is Safeway, right? So they're all served by the same utility. They all have the same kind of service from the utility. So they're going to pay for whatever charging activity I'm going to go do there. Just me is the only example. All three of those are going to pay the exact same amount from the utility. But where it gets different is that each of those can decide whatever they want to charge. So in the case of Tesla, let's say Tesla's got a bunch of old um, Tesla Model S batteries that they've deployed as stationary battery assets on their part of that intersection, so that they can use cheaper electricity and use that off-peak cheaper electricity for when I'm actually charging there. So they could offer me a slightly lower price, maybe, than the Electrify America on the other street corner. The Safeway, though, the Safeway could say, all right, well, yes, I would pay the Safeway. I am the Safeway in this example. I would pay the same amount as Tesla or Electrify America for your charging activities, but I have a bunch of really high profit margin things inside my store. So if you charge here, I'll give you a break on the charging. Your charging is going to be cheaper, but yeah, come on in. We got a whole bunch of good stuff here, and I'm pretty sure you're going to buy some of my stuff, and I'll actually make more money on all of it together than if you had gone to the Tesla and then stopped over here at the Safeway.
Yeah, so they have levers, similar levers as well. Those providers. I think
Yep.
that's a great point. They can use storage, and Tesla's a prime example because they like have a lot of access to batteries. And then also that's a second life example
Yep.
of when electric vehicle batteries maybe degrade to a point where you don't necessarily want to use it for transportation. There's still a whole lot of battery capacity left, and an application for that.
Yep.
And it can help them offset their costs. Someone like a Safeway could put solar across that big roof space that they have,
Yep.
Safeway or Piggly Wiggly, because hey, Piggly Wiggly, you could be a sponsor too. I wouldn't mind saying that more.
It is fun to
Just
say.
throwing it out there. But yeah, so they have levers that they can pull that you don't have with gasoline. Um, and I love the example of hey, while you're charging here, there's a bunch of other stuff that we can offer you that can help generate more income, because I think
Yep.
that's a big opportunity in the public charging space. So
Yeah, and there's when we were in pretty sure it was Belgium as we were traveling somewhere. They have a very good it's a bathroom model, so it's not the same. But basically you come in, you have to, at a lot of these places in Belgium you have to pay to use the bathroom, but you get a you get a big discount on a coffee or something on the way out. So yeah, you pay to use the bathroom, but you get a coupon to use some of that off of another product that you're going to buy. So it's that kind of packaging that Piggly Wiggly could do if they were thinking about it in that big picture sense.
and those pay to use bathrooms are usually pretty nice as far as
Yes.
bathrooms go. So
Yeah, it always I'm yeah, I'm pretty cheap myself. So I'm like, God, I don't have to pay to use a bathroom. Yes, they are nice. That's the upside. It's they're clean, they're well lit, they don't smell. I'm sure
the,
somebody
the
has
doors the
experience.
doors go all the way down to the floor a lot of times. Like in the stalls, it's a full door.
It's like your
I
own
think
little space.
we missed the mark on that one here in the U.S., I tell you.
Some of the places that I've been in gas stations, bad, bad, nightmare fuel. All right. Well, it's good to be back. I think we'll get back on a little bit of regular cadence. You have a plane to catch pretty soon, so I hope you have a lovely trip for everybody out there.
Yes, headed to Hawaii, so it should be fun.
Beautiful,
Yeah.
beautiful. So everybody like and subscribe. Will's gonna send you pictures of him on the beach with an umbrella drink.
Yep, we'll have a full slideshow at the next recording. Tune in again for that.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you. Please like and subscribe. Send us your feedback. We will be back in your ear with some new things, and we'd love to take on whatever topic you have that's top of mind for you. So send it over.
Yes.
We'll chew on it with you.
Yeah, much like electricity fuels electric vehicles, your subscriptions and likes and comments fuel Jeff and I to deliver excellence. So,
That's why it's so
or at
dark.
least try.
That's why it's so dark where we are. Well, we don't have enough likes and subscribe. So if you guys could help us out, please. All right, man. Good to see you. Enjoy your
You
trip.
too.
Thank you, everybody,
Thanks.
for listening. We'll be back soon.